Welcome back to another episode of Loose Frame Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Martin Olich, and joining me as always is...
Hillary Weber.
And...
Jesse Brown.
Hello, ladies. How are you?
Good. I'm trying to talk a little lower because I noticed I tend to shout.
Shout,
when I
yeah.
talk.
We were literally just having an
trying to be a
offline
little
conversation.
sultry.
Like, could you push your microphone a little further away?
And stop banging on the table.
Yes. Well, that's
That
mostly
wasn't
me.
you. That wasn't you.
Yeah, I gesticulate a lot.
Yeah, your little
so
drum set over there.
I'll try not to do that this time. I literally just hit the microphone. Well, it is a new year. I don't know when this is actually releasing, but it's
This
definitely
is not releasing in January.
It's
but
after the new year, though, so
Yeah.
it's a new year to somebody. Maybe you're just waking up. But we have a great show coming up today, talking about independent cinema with one of our favorite local art house cinemas, Michael Hazlitt, who is the owner-operator of Greenlight Cinema over in St. Pete. But let's talk a little bit about independent cinema. Do you guys still go to the theaters?
Of course.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think we're a little skewed, though, because we work in film. So, of course, like we're supporting theaters and
I
we
mean, I
love
don't
to
s-
go to the movies.
I guess.
Do you?
No. No, I do go. Look, I grew up where I went to the theater every week without fail.
Right.
And Christmas Day, like you get up early, open your packages, and we would go right to the theater. Like
Mhm.
it was a tradition. You did it weekly.
Yeah.
I think I've seen maybe, excluding film festivals, right? Like just you wake up on a Thursday, it's like, I'm going to go to the movies tonight. Like other than Maverick, I don't know if I've seen anything else in theaters that I wasn't either forced to or it was part of a film festival.
Did you see Maverick at AMC?
It was a box
Just a
chain
box,
theater. Yeah, I think at least once at AMC, but I saw it 3 times. But what
Wow.
was, all right, so we're going to prove this. But what was the last thing you guys saw outside of a film festival?
The
At a theater.
The last thing I saw was with my friend, and she suggested that we go see this, but it was the thriller horror movie Smile.
Smile. Okay.
Hmm. And it was between that or Barbarian. And after seeing Barbarian, I wish we had seen Barbarian in the
Yeah.
theater. But Smile was pretty good.
Okay. What about you, Hillary?
I was super psyched for Moon Age Daydreams, so
Okay.
I paid to see it, and then I saw it again at a film festival,
Okay.
if that counts.
Well, you saw at least one. I take that back. Actually, when I'm sitting here thinking about, like, I saw a bunch of stuff this last year. So I saw like Green Knight. Was that this year?
That was
Last year?
Is it all coming back
just
to you?
over a year ago?
Yeah, all right.
flood of memories?
Yeah, like a bunch of stuff I saw in theaters. Mostly at Greenlight Cinema, since I live right around the corner from
That's
it.
why I was
actually
asking.
go. Yeah, all right. I take that back. I've
Yeah.
seen a bunch of things this year. Northman, which we actually ended up talking about a little bit
Mm-hmm.
with Michael, which I also didn't care for, and I was really excited for it. Robert
Yeah.
Eggers is like one of those filmmakers I'm like excited when he comes out with a new movie.
Mm-hmm.
Not a great movie.
I did, I don't want to say catfished, but catfished for another word. I saw Don't Worry, Darling in the theater.
Yeah.
And it was bad. But I
Yeah.
fell for the whole press junket, and like I just wanted to see what everybody was talking about.
Yeah.
So press
Well,
works, I guess,
we
for
did a
people
little-
like me.
We did a little social media, speaking of press,
Yeah.
just to set this up for independent cinema.
Well, I wanted to know if people see movies in the theater anymore and if they prefer seeing them at the theater or at home. I also put a option, it depends on the movie. So after polling everyone, it was tied between seeing a movie at the theater and depending on the movie. Those both came in at 47%. And only 6% of people voted that they actually prefer to watch it at home.
I think that's kind of skewed just because our audience, I'm assuming if you're listening to a film podcast, you're
That you're
probably
a filmmaker, film lover.
cinema enthusiast of some sort.
Yes.
I don't know if someone in middle America is sitting there saying, like, I got to drive, 40 minutes to the nearest cinema to see, Don't
Yeah.
Worry, Darling or something like that.
Yeah.
Probably not.
I feel like if I had just put at theater or at home, it would have been very different. But I wanted that third option because it really does depend on the movie, and that's my choice.
Yeah. So Hillary, do you think people actually still want us? So non-filmmakers, cinephiles, which is a very small percentage of people. You think people still want to go to the movie theaters?
I think for the non-movie freaks, I think it really depends on the experience. I think cinephiles are more likely to go see a movie just because they want to see the film.
Yeah.
But for everybody else, they're thinking about, well, what seats am I going to be in? And what am I going to be eating? And are my friends going to be there? And all of that other stuff that kind of goes along with just like a night out versus simply like going to experience the
Yeah.
film.
I also asked another question on our social media of what is the last movie you went to go see. And 3 people said the Avengers, Black Panther, that new movie.
When did that come out? Was that
I'm
in the
not
fall or
Yeah.
late summer?
Yeah.
I think it was
a few months
fall,
ago.
like after Thanksgiving-ish.
Okay.
Yep. So Black Panther, Wakanda, Terrifier 2, Maverick, of course, Smile was one of them, and Babylon. 3 people went to go see Babylon. Why
Well,
do you
that's
think?
right.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, the hype around Babylon, and it's got amazing cast. I think they did an excellent job in the press junket. Like
Yes.
obviously, if you're rolling out a movie with a big budget behind it and you're a star, you're contractually obligated to do the press junkets. But this is one of the only movies I've seen this year where the cast actually doing the press junket looked genuinely excited to talk about the movie they made, which I thought was a good indication. So,
Yeah.
but it's not playing in a lot of places. In fact,
No.
it's almost impossible to find, which plays into our discussion with Michael and just how
Mhm.
movies are rolled out. But
yeah, from our personal research, it seems like horror movies and big blockbusters are the ones that people are going out for, whether that's Marvel or Maverick.
yeah,
Or,
but I think that's for obvious reasons. Like, if you are you going to see a $500 million movie on your home TV, or you're going to go see it like an Avatar in an actual theater? Probably the theater.
Right.
And same thing with horror movies. I think horror movies you want to enjoy with other people. That's part of the fun.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone who gets scared sitting in their living room by themselves watching Smile. Like, I'm sure there's a horror movie out there that would scare somebody, but Smile's probably not it, right? At least by yourself. But with that, we need to move on. We have a great discussion
Yeah.
with Michael Hazlitt, again, who is the owner-operator of Greenlight Cinema. And with that, we'll be back with Michael Hazlitt. Welcome back to Loose Frame Podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Tyler Martin Olich, and joining me now is my friend, Michael Hazlitt. Hey, Michael, how are you, buddy?
I'm good. How are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. I am doing excellent. I like to start these interviews off with like what I call the good housekeeping questions.
Sure.
Or Reader's Digest. Not that I think anyone actually reads those anymore.
No.
But
You're showing your age.
we're
man.
both old. But why don't you tell us a little about us? So you are the owner-operator of Greenlight Cinema.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll get into Greenlight Cinema and what that is.
Okay. So I'm from Boston originally and the New England area, as you can kind of tell. And so my wife and I moved down here about 8 years ago, and we moved to St. Pete. We're walking around the city, and we're like, "Where's the independent movie theater?" So I have the background. We did it. Started building it in January of 2020, which was really great.
Fantastic timing.
So good.
If I was going to build a
awesome.
cinema, it'd be right before the pandemic.
Exactly. So we started in January. We didn't open until October. 2 years, and we're hanging in there. But the business remains incredibly challenging. And, the business has completely changed from 2019, as you know, to now. And still a lot of unknowns and chaos within the whole business. And but we're hanging in there, and we're going to keep going forward.
Yeah. Well, Greenlight is definitely like the preeminent, I will say, independent cinema in Pinellas County, which which isn't saying a lot. But you can extrapolate that out. I mean, too.
Sure.
Obviously, we have Tampa Theater here in the Tampa Bay area, which we actually had a John Bell, the CEO of Tampa Theater, as a guest not too long ago. But there really isn't a lot of independent cinemas. So before we talk a little bit about distribution and what Greenlight represents, how did you get into the theatrical venue business? Was it just on a whim? And what's your background that led you
It was
to
kind
that?
of a whim, man. I was at the University of New Hampshire, and I walked into this little theater in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, called the Music Hall. And it's not little; it's like this. It's like the Tampa Theater size. And they were looking for a part-time job, and I walked in. I fell in love with the place. The theater was built in 1878, so there was a nonprofit group that was formed, and we were trying to save the theater as well as present the arts. So we had our own series. We were a rental house. We had a full film series. We ran that theater 365 days out of the year. So that's kind of what, and then I fell into it. I did a lot of stage work. I stage managed. I did crew. I booked films. I worked in the box office. I worked on contracts. I kind of made my bones in the business there. And then about 7 years into that, I took a job in Portland, Maine, running a big 2,000 seat performing arts theater. So I have a long kind of history with that.
And at that point, you just said, screw it, no more cold winters. We're going to Florida.
Yeah. I mean, I got out of it. And then, I'd always had this idea that I was going to get back in, because it's a weird life, right? If you're running theaters, you're working when nobody else is working. It's weekends and stuff. And I kind of got burnt out. And I was like, I'm going to get back into it. And we moved down here, and I'm like, okay, there's a lane, because nobody's doing independent movie theaters down here. I was kind of shocked by it, actually, especially St. Pete. Right. It's such an arty...
Right. I mean, the whole city sort of positions itself as like the art center of Florida. Yet there was no independent cinema.
Right. And then, everybody, and then I got to hear the story of the Beach Theater 7 million times from people who would come to Greenlight.
Yeah.
And,
which for those listening, the Beach Theater was an independent cinema back in its heyday, right on the beach, very popular, and then it just slowly crumbled into what it is today, which is basically a hollowed out space.
Yeah, and it had a lot of different iterations, right? I mean, there was the 40s and the heyday, and then the guy bought it, and it's been dark. And so, anyways, so I'm like, we're going to do this, and yeah, I mean, I think there's room for it in the city, and it's just been the worst timing ever. There's no other way to put it. And the other, I mean, there was COVID, and now the business has changed completely.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the business here in a second, but let's sort of establish what Greenlight is. So you are an 80 seat or 85 seats.
Yeah, 80.
One screen art house theater in the heart of downtown St. Pete.
Yep. It's fully digital, and we do brand new art house, art house, indies, foreign, docs. We do some classics. We're doing the stuff. The whole idea was we're going to bring the films that should be seen in a decent sized city to the community.
Yeah.
And that's what we've done. It's just been, challenging.
Yeah. It's interesting because, AMC still exists. You still have, multiplexes, but people have been saying for years that theatrical is dead. Theatrical is dead. Like, that's the thing we keep hearing over and over and over again. And it's true to a certain extent. I mean, if you're a 20 screen theater, you're playing Maverick on 5 screens, maybe 10 of those screens. Yeah. So it really has pushed out the true independence. And I think a lot of that is because of streaming services. But what are the types of movies you were playing? I mean, you mentioned the genres, but like, name a couple of movies you played recently that the audience might know.
That they know?
Yeah, well, if they don't know, it's because they don't have an art house cinema in their area.
So we just did a Polish film called EO. And, sometimes I book films because I should book films.
Yeah.
Right. These are important films in the context of where we are right now. And, I don't expect to sell a lot of tickets, but this is a Polish film, and it's going to get nominated for an Oscar. And we kept selling it for 3. Sometimes the audience surprises you, and then we're playing Corsage right now, which is a German-Austrian film. She's probably going to get nominated. Mm-hmm. Then we have All the Beauty and the Bloodshed, which is a neon, doc that's probably going to win. And, we have Oscar shorts coming. Yep. So we're doing that kind of art house fare, and, if you look at any of the other kind of Burns Court, the Enzian, whatever, we're all playing the same films, right? It's just a matter of we're the outlet to see those films in this area.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the business. So I think we've mentioned in a previous podcast just like how theatrical works. It's mostly block booking, where a big Warner Brothers, whoever distributor, will tell an AMC, okay, well, you can have Maverick, but you're going to play it on X number of screens this many times for this many weeks. Yep. Which is fine if you're a multiplex and have the ability to play that many movies or that few movies so many times during the day, which is not really sustainable for an independent art house film. No. Like, you couldn't show EO, which you mentioned, 5 times a day, 7 days a week. Like, you would literally, you'd be spending more on the electric than you would actually in ticket sales.
Right.
So how has the business changed, and what makes art house cinemas unique in your ability to schedule smaller films for a brief amount of time?
It's a really interesting question. One of the things, so when you start something like this, one of the things that's really important is you establish a relationship with the distributors. And when I say the distributors, I'm talking about A24, Neon, IFC, Sony Picture Classics, the kind of, not Warner Brothers and Paramount, though I do deal with them sometimes too. And, the way it works is they kind of dictate terms. And and I refuse to play that game. And it's really, they're not happy with me a lot. But you know what? You do the numbers and all is forgiven. And so the way that I go at it is I have to make the best decisions for the space. And, I've gotten, and it's 2 years and now Neon, like with Neon, he just calls me and he says, this is what we got. Boom, boom, boom. What do you want? And then do with it whatever you want, which is pretty rare. Variants, which is a thing with Janus, they're the same way now because we just did really good numbers with EO. We did really good numbers last year with Drive My Car. So you just it's really a lot of interpersonal stuff and also the ability to push back. They're not used to being pushed back on, and I have no problem doing that. And so we've been able to, I think they kind of respect it in a way, but it's not the same as booking for, a megaplex where they will just dictate terms. Plus, you're paying a lot more for those films. If you get Top Gun, they're going to say it's going to be on 5 screens and you're going to show it 25 times a day and you're going to pay us 80% the first week, 75, 70, whatever. I pay about 40 to 45, depending on the film. And then like classics, you can get those for about either a guarantee versus 35% or whatever. So you just have to be, for me, it's about, I advocate for my space. And I'll sell your films better than anybody, but you have to let me do that.
Yeah.
This is my market. I know this market. I mean, we're curating films. AMC doesn't care about the films that they have, or Regal. They're just like, somebody from LA calls them on Thursday and says, this is what you're playing. Good luck. Yeah. And they don't know anything about the movie. So we're trying to introduce these films to this audience that has not had this. And so that's part of, the challenge there.
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that we've been hearing for years that cinema is dead. Theatrical cinema is dead. Is that a true statement?
No. I mean, if you look at the box office numbers between 2009 and 2019, they were pinned at $10 to $12 billion a year. And that was when streaming really took off, right? So they were living side by side, and I think that what people forget is that the streaming services, what they really do well are the shows, right? They created this whole new thing with these really high energy, high impact television shows, water cooler stuff. Yeah. And so, they were living side by side. And so what happened with the pandemic is they had to put them out somewhere, right? And it changed people's behavior patterns. That's really what it was. And I also think part of it was people go to the chains, but they're not really happy to go to the chains, right? The tickets are crazy expensive.
Yeah, it's always dirty.
It's dirty. The concessions is crazy. They play 40 minutes of trailers like at the volume of a jet engine, but those were the only options, right? So you go, and so now it's almost like, forget you guys, I can watch Batman at home. Yeah. And but it's not the same experience. It's just not. And people say to me all the time, they have these kind of vague notions about film, and they say nobody makes any good movies anymore. And I'm like, come to Greenlight. Come down to Greenlight. There are amazing films being made. Nobody's seeing them because, it's the movie business after 2.5 years of this is still in utter chaos and panic because the butcher's bill is coming due. You can't just, the movie business lost $30 billion in ticket sales in the last 3 years. That resonates. That's going to trickle down, yeah. And I think we're going to realize that in 2023.
Well, and I think that's a great point you bring up is that people keep saying, oh, there's no good movies, and it's because of the way streaming works and how algorithms work, right? You might not ever hear about these movies because your
Right,
watching behaviors is not going to lead to those movies showing up in your queues. So unless an Amazon or whoever is actively pushing those movies through their own internal advertising, you're never going to see those. And that's so different than how it used to be in the past when they would have a theatrical release and word of mouth would catch fire in a community,
Right.
and all of a sudden people
Yes.
are going to see it because
Yes.
people hear about it. The way you program movies now, are you getting the marketing materials needed to help educate people that these films are worth seeing? Like, let's take The Whale, for example, which I think had a not great rollout after its initial
a bad rollout.
festival run. And I would argue it's because they had a terrible trailer. They had no marketing materials other than the hype coming out of the festivals and sort of the social media spin around Brendan Fraser. So what are you actually given when you are booking a film in the sort of the independent realm that you need to use to actually get people to come to your theater?
So depends on the distributor, right? So like Neon gives us plenty of stuff. We get the one sheets and the posters and the trailers, and we get a long list of social assets, and then it's up to us. And that's the way that I like it, right? You give me the tools, and we're going to market your film better than anybody. And you know, our social media, our Instagram and Facebook is really solid. And now those are the tools now. You're not going to, you're not doing billboards or newspaper things or whatever. It's all social media. And so, and then other distributors, smaller distributors, you have to go out and you have to kind of create it yourself. And that's what we'll do. And so it's not really, we do get the tools. It's, what really helps us is, like EO is a perfect example, and it happened with Drive My Car, and it happens occasionally, is if we get a film in that week, you get a New York Times review, a Washington Post review, and something on NPR, that drives my audience, and it's that kind of...
So you're sort of riding on top of the other marketing.
As much as we can.
Yeah.
If we can catch that wave, absolutely. We try to connect to it. And like Chris, who does our Facebook stuff, it's funny because Instagram and Facebook, completely different audiences, right? Facebook's an older audience. So we push reviews and, the New York Times, Washington Post, New Yorker, all that kind of stuff. And those people like that kind of stuff, right? And so we get assets and tools from the distributors, but we enhance it as much as we can with other stuff that's out there.
Yeah. So you mentioned during the pandemic how there was no open theaters. So distributors, major studios were pushing more of their big features onto streaming platforms, sometimes to their detriment. And coming out of the pandemic, we've seen now this sort of hybrid where it'll be in a theater for a week, 2 weeks, and then go into streaming immediately after that, or an on-demand. But it doesn't seem like that is a great business model, in my opinion. You look at what they did with Glass Onion, where they did phenomenal numbers for 3 days, and then it just disappeared from theatrical venues and went right on the streaming.
Right.
So is that just the new norm, or do you think that is just sort of the last vestiges of the pandemic and we're going to get rid of that platform?
I think that the way so you get to the end of the year and you're looking at kind of prestige art house, right? Tar, Fabelmans, Amsterdam, Empire of Light. And the way those films would have been rolled out in the past is you go LA, New York, then you go to 20
larger markets,
Dallas, maybe Tampa, whatever. And then you would platform, which is 600 screens. And then you would sit there for a while and figure out, do we have something that'll go wide, right? Do we have a film that's got some legs? What happened this year is they went LA, New York, and then because the megaplexes don't have any content, they went wide. So they were going from 2 screens to 2,000 or 3,000.
So there wasn't a building platform.
There was none. And so you had no ability to kind of do word of mouth, build it up. And then what happened is they go to 2,500 megaplexes, do zero business. They panic, throw it into video on demand at $20 a head, and the film's in the theaters for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. This happened to major films in the last 3 months. I think they're going to scrap it. I think it was a huge mistake. Yeah. I think they realized that. And you're going to have to find that balance between theatrical and streaming. They can't afford to leave theatrical money on the table.
Yeah. I mean, I think we were talking offline about this upcoming Oscar season. And when we're recording this, we don't know who the actual nominees are going to be. I think the voting isn't even until the 17th. But this could be, they're predicting the year where the least amount of people saw the nominated films.
Yeah.
Because they didn't exist anywhere, right? Because to your point, they went out to 2,500 theaters for 2 days, and if you missed it, you're gone.
Right.
And they're slowly coming online on some of the streaming platforms. But I think a lot of them are holding off to see if they do get a nomination and they can sort of ride that marketing buzz. Like Fableman, it should be amazing. You can't find it anywhere.
You can't find it anywhere.
And Babylon can't find it anywhere.
Right. And what they did also, there was always a kind of secondary market where if you got a nomination, or especially if you won,
you re-released.
Yeah. That's gone. It's because you can't re-release Fablemans after it's been streaming for 3.5 months. You know, the Oscars are February 12th, I think.
It's March this year. I think it actually pushed a month. Maybe I'm wrong. Either way, but like you're right. You can't just genie's out of the bottle.
Yep, it totally is. And I think it kind of reflects back. I think part of the issue is I talk to people all the time and they say, "Oh, I went over to see, I went to AMC and I saw whatever," and they say to you, "There was nobody there. There's nobody there." And so I think there's a confusion within the public.
Yeah.
Like, is it a movie? Is it a streamer? Is it going to be theatrical? How long is it going to be there? What platform is it going to be? Is it going to cost me? Is it going to be part of the package I already have? You got to clear that up somehow. And because people now, they just kind of throw their hands up and they're like, well, I'll just wait till it's on Netflix or Amazon because it'll get there eventually.
Yeah.
And so, this is all self-inflicted. And some of it's understandable. I mean, COVID wiped this business out for 2 years. And and I think there's going to have to be a contraction within the theaters, right? There's 40,000 screens in this country. We don't need 40,000 screens anymore. Somebody, I forget who it was, somebody from one of the distributors said to me that AMC does 80% of its business on 40% of its screens. There it is.
Yeah.
But they're not there yet. They're still in denial that we're going to get back to a $12 billion a year business. I don't think it's going to happen. I think, are we an $8 billion a year business theatrical? Probably. That's still a big business.
Yeah. Oh, huge.
Yeah.
But it's not enough to sustain a 20-screen theater. Maybe 10 or less. Maybe you're an 8-screen movie house. That seems doable. But I think the days of the huge multiplexers are gone.
It's over. There's no doubt.
There's still a need for them. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I wouldn't watch Maverick. I've seen it 3 times in theaters. I wouldn't watch that in my home theater. And I have an 85-inch TV, but I still want that spectacle.
Yes.
Same thing with Avatar, which I'm not going to go see for a variety of reasons. But that's something that you should see probably in a theater.
Well, and you know what? You can make the case, too, for the films that I'm showing. Yeah. I mean, I did Moon Age Daydream, the Bowie film. And the whole time I'm in the theater watching this, I'm like, this is not the same film at your house.
Yeah.
You can say that for EO. You could, and so I think part of it is we're going to have to kind of reintroduce theatrical to people, define what it is.
That's interesting you bring that up because I think, you mentioned you go into a theater and there's no one else in the room with you. That says something.
It does, there. Yeah.
But at the same time, like a movie like, I don't know, like the Whale or Babylon or whatever it is, it's nice to be in a theater, even if it's an 85-seat theater, 80-seat theater, and have it filled with people around you.
Yes.
Right? There is a communal experience to that.
100%.
But you can't get in a 300-seat theater because you just can't sell enough tickets to justify a movie like that.
Right.
So smaller art house films, I think, lend itself to that excitement of being around people. We were talking offline about horror movies. Why are horror movies bulletproof? And it's because they need to be experienced communally.
Yep.
It's not the same in your living room. You need the person next to you jumping, right?
It's so true. I mean, that is the one genre of films that just has done wonderful during all of this. It's so crazy. And, good for them. I mean, this Megan film.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
huge.
There
was a review.
Huge.
I won't call it the reviewer, but it mentioned it was the laziest horror movie he's ever seen. And yet it still did a ton of money.
A ton of money. So I mean, it's I think we're going to get into this space where we kind of have to reintroduce it, maybe even redefine it, right? Theatrical isn't, you're going to the chain and like you're going to the Hard Rock Cafe or Vegas, right? Yeah. It's about going to your neighborhood theater, your neighborhood joint where people know you and you're not getting ripped off and you're talking to people in the lobby before and after and maybe going out and getting a drink after, whatever. I mean, I think that's the model. That's the model that I'm banking on anyways, and I think I think there's a kind of ingrained reaction to the change that's been programmed, that we go because it's the only option. But we don't like it. So let's give people a different look. Yeah. And that's what we're trying, with Greenlight. And I just take it as a win that we're still there after 2 years. I mean, I had the worst timing ever, and we hung in there, and I think we're going to be fine. But this business, I think we're going to sort a lot of this out in 2023, but we're not there yet.
Yeah.
We're definitely not there
I don't
yet.
think we've actually experienced the lack of production bubble that was coming out of the pandemic too. So I mean, it takes about 2 years for a film to gestate from being pitched to actually having a theatrical release. Right, it takes about that long. So films that were interrupted during the pandemic, that should be coming online now. We saw this in the fall where there was just a complete desert of production. Of theatrical releases. I think that's going to extend for a couple months. I think there's going to be a couple of rough little bumps along the road where things that should have been released during these months aren't because they weren't ready in time.
Right. And it's going to kill the chains. Yeah. I mean, there was something I saw a couple of weeks ago where It's a Wonderful Life, one day in December, was the number 6 film in the country. Think about that theatrically, right? Like, what? It was made 80 years ago. Good for them, whoever owns the film. But that's because there's just complete lack of content. And so, yeah, I mean, they're going to have to figure this out. And we don't need 40,000 screens in this country anymore. We don't.
Well, we do need independent cinema, and one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on is one to for people listening that is in actual earshot of where we're recording this. You should be supporting your independent cinemas, your Tampa theaters, your green lights. And if you're not, and you're listening somewhere else around the country, I guarantee there's an independent cinema somewhere within driving distance, and you should be going. So, what I want to switch gears here in the conversation, governments, large companies sponsor art festivals all the time. They sponsor public art, and I don't think cinema, especially art house cinema, independent venues, have really ever gotten the same love or attention that they should from the community. But you are doing a service that is absolutely as important as a new statue in the middle of downtown St. Pete. So what should the local community do to support you more?
Just come and see movies. That's it. I'm not running this as a nonprofit. And though if I have to switch at some point, we'll do it. But I wanted to have this be market driven. Yeah. Right. I'm in a city of 300,000 people. I have an 80-seat theater. There should be enough people.
Absolutely.
And it's just about kind of, when I first started this, I said to the guy that I leased the building from, I said, this is a 3-year process, right? To do a really good art house, the most important thing is building an audience, right? You want to build a big, deep audience that's made up of little micro audiences, right? These people like docs, and these people like foreign, and these people like horror, and then we got the classics over here, and hopefully you have crossover between the different audiences. And that's just been incredibly difficult to do, and we are constantly growing, but it's just been, a 3-year process has become, I might be able to get there in 3 years. We're just heading into our 3rd year.
Yeah.
But it's, people say to us, oh, we're so glad you're here. And I'm like, okay, come and see a movie.
Yeah. And tell 5 other people about it.
And tell 5 other people, right? It's really about, you can do all the social media and all the flashy stuff and all that all day long. It's about people talking to other people, right? And people who, and what's really interesting is like, I'm from Boston, so like with the theater, you see people walking by all the time. And if they're from away, as we say in New England, they look at the theater and they're like, oh yeah, there's the independent movie theater. If you're from St. Pete, I get a lot of blank looks like what is this?
Yeah.
You know, so there was this whole layer of education that I had no idea existed because I'm not, you know, because I come from a different perspective. So that's, you know, you continue that stuff. Like we have Localtopias coming up in a couple of weeks, and, you know, they close the street off and we just open the doors. Come on in.
See what we're
Wander
about. Yeah.
around. You know, we've got trailers on the screen so people can kind of get an idea. And it's just, that has been a kind of difficult lift just with all the external forces that have been kind of affecting this.
Hey, do you think there's a generational gap here too? I mean, you hear about people all the time, like, you know, if you're a millennial, you don't have the attention span anymore, or a zennial. Like, or do you see that movies are still movies, and if you put out a good movie, people will still come see it no matter what the age is?
It's totally that. I mean, the films that do the best for us are great films.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and sometimes they'll shock you. Our biggest selling film this summer was the Leonard Cohen doc, Hallelujah. I like Leonard Cohen. I booked the film, Sony Pictures. We have a good relationship with them, and they just kept coming. And I have people, they're hugging and crying and whatever in the lobby. I was shocked by it. We played it for 3 weeks. Sometimes they shock you. Sometimes they come out of nowhere for this. And it was a really well-made film.
Yeah. Well, just because you brought that one up, is there a movie that you thought was going to do amazing numbers and then just totally flopped?
Northman.
I saw it at your theater.
That's right.
And I think I was one of 4 people in the audience.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, it was funny because I got into a big fight with A24 because the week before Northman, I had Everything Everywhere.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to have it 3 weeks before Northman, and they bumped me twice. And I'm like, yeah, I'll keep I was supposed to give them 2 weeks. And she bumped me, and then she bumped me again. And she's like, you're going to be able to do 2 weeks? I'm like, oh, yeah. And then, but I got Northman booked, you know, after the first week. And we got into a little bit of fight with them over that. But yeah, that film, it just didn't work. I don't think it was a very good film.
It felt very disparate and forced. Yes, especially the opening act just felt very theatrical, and then it went in a totally different direction. In the second half,
and
it kind of lost its momentum through the second half.
Right, and when we were looking to book it checked all the boxes. Right, it's got Robert Eggers, and it's the director of The Lighthouse, and it was A24.
Skarsgård.
It's got names.
Ethan Hawke. Yeah,
you know, and it's got the whole thing, and they were kind of marketing as like a Game of Thrones kind of thing, and they lost a ton of money on that film.
Yeah.
But it was a bad film. And so.
Well, and I think that's how trailers can also, I mean, the trailers showed this being this amazing, you know, Viking epic. And you watch the first 15 minutes of the movie. Right. It's like, is this Macbeth? Like, what is going on here?
It's so true. It was a lot of brooding.
Yes.
Right?
Like, what am I watching?
Yeah,
so
it's true.
I could see how someone walked into that theater and was like, I don't know about this. And it was overly long too. But anyway, I'm getting the high sign from people here. So we got to start wrapping up here. Where do you see Greenlight expanding in the next, let's say, 5 years? So you're hoping just to make it for the third, which I think you will. I'm pretty confident. But how does an independent cinema grow?
Well, I mean, I think that we have to see how the chains get
shuffled around,
right? And I think there's a lot of low hanging fruit. I think that if the opportunity were to arise, that we would think about doing something of a more commercial venture within St. Pete and over here too, if we could kind of make the numbers work. You know, I think that one of the great values of independent movie theaters is that you're connected to your audience and you're connected to your market. And, you know, the chains just aren't. And they're just riding the national advertising wave and the hype and the Marvel and all of that stuff. And that's the other thing. I mean, I think they're running out of road with Marvel and all of that stuff too. You can only do Batman or whatever it is so many times.
Yeah. I actually think the TV series are hurting them as well. I mean,
I think that's right.
And as good as especially the Marvel series have been on Disney Plus, like, I'm just tired of it. Like, I don't care anymore. There's nothing special about it.
Right. I think that's right. And you know what? Some of that stuff, it's okay if it's a TV thing, you know? I mean, there's room for both, but movies are art. good movies. It's a legitimate, real art form, and that's what we're trying to push and promote, and all of that, and you know it. But you're also connected to a business that measures itself exclusively with dollars, right? We're the only kind of business. It's not like, hey, the Bucks played last week and they did $300 million at the box office, right? It's that's exclusively film, which is really kind of interesting.
It is. I mean, it's one of the few industries where people still look at like Box Office Mojo, or they still in newspapers. They still print the box office.
That's the
receipts
that's
on,
the
on
metric.
Monday over the weekend. It's like, why?
Right.
Was it a good movie or not?
Right. And like how many people came?
Yeah.
Right. It's not about the people or the quality of the film. What's the dollar amount?
Yeah.
And that's so exclusive to. But the challenge is to find both. Right. Try to find the balance between, you know, promoting an art form and making it fiscally viable.
Yeah.
It's that, you know, that, and so that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. I'm just thinking of Cameron and Avatar, where, you know, after the opening week, it wasn't about whether it was a good movie or not. It's like, it made $1 billion, but was it good?
Right.
You never see the mention.
Right.
Anyway, we got to wrap this up here, Michael. If people want to learn more about Greenlight, where can they go to find tickets and upcoming shows?
So the website is greenlightstpete.com, and we're also on Facebook and Instagram.
All right. And for those listening in the St. Pete, Tampa Bay area, Central Florida area, it's worth making the drive over. You're going to see movies you can't find anywhere else in theaters at Greenlight. So I hope you support local cinema, and if you're not even from the area, find your local art house and make sure you make an effort to go see movies there. Support film in theaters. And with that, Michael, appreciate your time, buddy.
Yeah, man. It was great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
With that, we'll be right back. And welcome back, ladies. That was a lovely discussion with Mr. Hazlitt. I'm going to open up the back end discussion here to close this out to start by talking about just overall theater experiences. So we opened this podcast today talking about last thing we saw, but it was brought up during the conversation, like, do people actually enjoy going to multiplexes anymore? So I'll start with you, Hillary.
I obviously still enjoy going to the movies. I'll go to a multiplex. I'll go to an art house theater. It really, again, like depends on the experience. Do you guys remember when MoviePass was a thing?
Yes, I do.
I miss those days. I went to see a movie like almost every single day when I had a MoviePass.
Is that not around anymore?
I don't think so. Well, I think it was bankrupting AMC.
Yeah, it wasn't sustainable because
Yeah,
the people
yeah.
like me were going to see a movie every single day. They thought
Taking
people were
full
going to
advantage
use it
of
like
it.
one time a month.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah, they definitely had like, it's going to be a gym membership where, you know, you pay and you never go.
Yeah.
No, this is like every day.
it's my fault. I changed MoviePass.
You were the person solely responsible for bankrupting that whole program. What about you, Jesse?
Yeah, I enjoy going to the movies, whether it's with a girlfriend or on a date. I don't know. Something about it is kind of nostalgic for me.
Yeah.
It just kind of feels like the romance of the movies. And when I used to like think of them as like this big idea, and now I'm so close to it, working with it every day, that going to the movies kind of like brings that, I don't know, wonder back, not to be like too cheesy.
No, I'm glad someone likes it, because I absolutely hate the traditional movie experience these days. I mean, yes, I'll go see a Maverick because I want to see it in the largest theater possible and have that like jet engine level of sound just pulping your brains while you're watching a movie. That's fun for a very specific type of movie.
Yeah.
But if I walk in and there's popcorn everywhere, my shoes are sticking on the floor because, you know, someone barely mopped up someone that spilled their soda, or there's kids crying, and I feel bad for any parents out there who just want a night out and they have to take their kid out because they can't afford a babysitter or they can't find a babysitter. I get it, and I don't want to shame people for bringing their kids, but it's not what I want to experience, right?
Don't bring your screaming baby to a movie. We are not
But
paying
you
to
also
hear
have
them.
the older kids that I went to go see Spider-Man No Way Home in the theater. And I had teenagers next to me that were like cuddling on the same chair with blankets, and they were all on their phone and talking. And I was just like the old granny, like, will you be quiet?
Yeah. Well, I think it's because they don't differentiate their home couch and the theater. Like that's how they watch movies at home. So that's how they watch, movies at the theater. I don't know. It's strange, but
they have recliners now. They have a lot of like alcohol, like special drinks.
Yeah,
at AMC for like specific to the movie.
I think that's gimmicks to try to keep bringing people back.
They're
to the
trying.
Theater. Yeah,
they're trying.
They're trying hard. Except the one thing they could try harder on is just cleaning the goddamn theater. Right? Like that's a minimum. Just clean the seats, clean the sticky shit.
Once the popcorn gets in there, though, and it starts to be like day 3, day 4, it just seeps in.
It does.
And then if you work in a theater, it gets in your blood and you can't get it out.
It's in your blood.
I shouldn't be so angry.
There's a
over
whole
it.
movie. That's a script in itself.
Yes, but it would be a movie like Taxi Driver, where the person cleaning the popcorn just finally
loses
flips.
it.
I actually, in one of my graduate classes for theater, we had to do verbatim monologues. And so that's where you do interviews with people and then you take them and you turn them into a monologue. So I interviewed people about their movie experiences and everyone was bitter and angry. And it turned into the most like angry, fun monologue about just like ranting about these horrible experiences.
Can we do that with Tyler?
Yeah, well,
Please.
I don't think we could publish that. We get demonetized immediately. But with that, so let's talk about a little bit about what we actually talked about.
Yeah, the good
Michael
stuff.
Haslett.
Do you have? Well, I was curious. Do you guys have a very memorable experience going to the theater that would not have happened if you were streaming at home?
I'll let you start, Hillary.
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. Sorry, I can't think of anything.
I have 2.
You have 2. That's why you asked a question, because you got an answer ready.
Yes, Jesse, I would love to answer that question.
All right. Well, Jesse, tell us one.
You guys might not like either of these. They're both affiliated with Disney, but I have to be that person in the group. Okay.
And she is that person. in the group.
My entire family went to go see Frozen, and it was when my sister was little. But I was there with my sister, my cousins, all next to each other, and then I swear we took an entire row. Like my aunts, uncles, we all went to go see this movie. I don't even remember what year it was, but I don't know. We just went. And there's a part in Frozen where the guy you think is the love interest turns bad. It's his heel turn, and he is trying to kill Anna. And it goes silent at that part. I think he says a line like, "Oh, only if somebody cared." And it's silent. And I said, "What a jerk." And the whole place started laughing. And I thought it was funny and it's memorable and it's cute. And my sister still like mentions it to this day.
Adorable.
And then the other one, I was actually at Cinebistro. That brings up another one. But I was at Cinebistro and it was Star Wars, the newer movies with Kylo Ren. And it was the shirtless scene where he takes his shirt off. And I swear when that happened, because we went opening night. So the theater was packed with people. And when that part
So this is the scene with Kylo Ren where he's got yoga pants on pulled up to his nipples?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that
Just
one.
want to make sure.
I know it's like, yeah, we've talked about this. But the entire place, all of the females, all of the women in the crowd were like, like just a general gasp in the audience. And I started cracking up because it was the funniest thing. It was just a collective gasp.
Oh, gosh.
I tell you what film I had a really good time watching recently. When we watched Triangle of Sadness at the Savannah Film Festival, I just like, you could feel the energy in the audience. I'm like, I would not have wanted to watch that one at home.
Yeah.
No, I think especially the second act would have been totally... It would have fallen flat had you not been in the theater to see it. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I have 2 actually too now that I think about it. So I got a chance to see the opening of Inglourious Bastards at the Cannes Film Festival with Tarantino and the full cast and crew.
What?
And even though I don't particularly like Inglourious Bastards, I think it's one of the weaker movies of his catalog. It was a lot of fun to watch it, and there was just so much energy. For those who haven't been to the Cannes Film Festival, it's in the Lumiere Theater, which is one of the largest theaters in the world. So it's not like 300 people; it's like thousands of people gasping and laughing and enjoying a movie. Not always at a Cannes Film Festival, but that was really fun. But the one that I can think of most recently is I went with a bunch of my nerdy friends to see the latest Ghostbusters movies. It was Afterlife, I think it was called, whatever it was. And when all the originals, at least the surviving originals, come back at the end of the movie, like there's just 5 dudes, me and my friends, and we're like in the second to front row, and we are just man sobbing, like absolutely crying.
That is so sweet.
No, it was embarrassing. Until the lights came up, because the movie is towards the end right there, and by the time it finally, the lights come up, you look around, and all it was middle-aged men in the audience, and everyone is just crying. I was like, oh, we're all so old and tragically.
That's one way to get men to go to therapy.
Right
Ghostbusters.
there. Ghostbusters. Yeah. Right. You heard it first. Ghostbusters therapy. But yeah, that's about the only thing I can think of recently that I truly enjoyed or a memorable experience.
Do you cry a lot at movies, or was that like
I cry every time John Wayne dies. So that's one of the things. Yeah.
Like sobbing or like a tear? Like a
manly tear.
A very manly tear.
I man sob. Yeah. Like.
You and Mr. Bear?
Me and Mr. Bear. Now no one at home knows who Mr. Bear is.
Mr. Bear is your Pomeranian.
He is my little Pomeranian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Though if I'm crying while watching a movie with him, it's probably because he bit me. I have just scars all over my hand. Anyway, this has gone completely off the rails. Jesse, was there any other notes you wanted to talk about?
No. Nope.
Okay.
Just support cinema.
Yeah.
In person.
Especially local cinemas. So whether it's Greenlight or if you're in Orlando, it's the Enzian. Like no matter where you're at, I guarantee you there is a art house cinema within driving distance somewhere. Someone's doing something interesting, trying to show cool movies you can't see everywhere else.
Yeah. And they're showing something that you haven't heard of, probably.
Right. Yeah. And Greenlight, they show movies, but they also do improv. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening at Greenlight that I think the whole community, whether you're looking for a movie or looking for activities or acting classes with Eugenie, you should definitely check them out.
Yeah. And I wish we'd have brought that up during the conversation we did, but they do have a lot of other non-film programming that they do.
Yeah.
But to your point, Hillary, these are movies that you probably haven't heard of, and it's because they mentioned it during the interview, like algorithms play off of what you last saw. So if you're not into watching art house cinema, Amazon, Netflix, it's not going to suggest a movie that there's no record of you liking something within those movies. So a lot of stuff just goes unheard of and it gets buried, like really good films.
Thanks, AI.
Yeah, thanks, AI.
Meta. Ugh.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. But with that, we've gone way too long on this outro. Jesse Brock, where can people find us?
We are Loose Framing Podcast. You can stream us anywhere you listen to podcasts or watch us on YouTube. And don't forget to follow us at Film Tampa Bay.
And with that, you've been watching Loose Framing Podcast. We'll see you next time.